teachers are teaching, but without a super clear idea of what that future looks like, that by itself, I think is it gives teachers a lot of anxiety. It gives people who are trying to help kids or young people today, it gives them a lot of anxiety, and that's pretty valid.
Hi, everyone. Joining me today is Christian Pinedo, the Director of External Affairs and Advocacy at the AI Education Project, an organization working to ensure that students are ready to live, work, and thrive in an AI world. Christian, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Hey, Eashan, nice to be here and chat with you today.
Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to this discussion. And for starters, do you just want to tell me how you got into AI and your current role?
Sure. I mean, the whole how you got into AI story is just so like everyone has different inlets, and I'm really like I always just love hearing this about everyone. Me personally, I feel like I actually never really got into AI on purpose. I was more so into education always, and then AI kind of was an accident. I taught for a while. I was a high school chemistry teacher for a little bit and a visual arts teacher for a little bit. Um, and most of my career, I just thought like I was going to be teaching for the rest of my life, and then. Um, I ended up actually finding a lot of long stories about like COVID and moving to Japan and teaching English there, and like a lot of just crazy COVID stuff happened at that point. And then I found myself kind of at a point where I was like, okay, what can I do with my career at this point? Um, I ended up going to work for, I kind of took a leap and I went to go work for the Institute for Human-Centered AI. I was interested in this concept of human-centered design. I actually taught design courses in the school that I was teaching at, and I was just very interested in this idea of like this concept of human-centeredness when it comes to artificial intelligence. So this is 2020, and so AI was not like a huge normal part of folks' conversations, and I was just very interested in the approach there. I joined that team and I ended up helping to run a lot of their education programming there. And so I worked a lot with high school kids. I did a lot of executive education programs and policymaker education programs. And I myself was an expert in like putting together the educational side of things, but that was like my learning journey for AI. I did not know much about AI, but all of a sudden I was working at Stanford with all of these experts, and over the couple of years that I was there, I just absorbed so much information. And I think that information really made me realize that the conversations about AI were not happening in the right rooms. They were not happening in spaces where we actually needed to do a lot of grassroots work. And so that's when I ended up leaving the Stanford Institute for Human-Centered AI and then joining aiEDU, where I am now.
Sounds like a great journey that you've had so far. I mean, I myself have explored a lot of the work that the Stanford HAI is doing, and it's certainly a defining organization in the space of human-centric and responsible AI. I also think that your work in AI literacy is extremely important with how much Gen Z and students are using technology these days. So I want to take a bit of time to understand a bit more about why AI literacy is important. So can you tell us about some of the ethical concerns that are currently associated with AI?
What a insane question. I mean, like I feel like that question is so huge. I don't know. It's really difficult to like put a pin into like what are the ethical concerns around AI just because it's like AI itself is changing so quickly. Like when I first started learning about the field, it was before generative AI and large language models really came onto the scene. And so we like even then there were lots of debates around ethics around AI and there was a lot of work being done there. But it's so different just because like AI is such a ubiquitous technology. Like you can find it everywhere. So like ethics in AI looks different from whether you're talking about healthcare versus trucking versus economics and using it in financial systems. Like it looks so different wherever you're looking. And so the goal around ethical AI is not necessarily to define it and say, hey, like this is good, this is green light zone, this is yellow light zone, this is red light zone. If you do that, you're just going to be updating it for every industry and within like every 2 months. It's changing so quickly. The goal here is to like people often like I trust people and their ability to make critical decisions for themselves. I think what they're lacking oftentimes is the context that they need in order to make those decisions. And so making ethical decisions, I think we need to teach ethics and we need to teach AI literacy. And those two things oftentimes can come together, but those two things can be taught separately as well. And so in school or in K-12 systems, it's really just about like how do we make sure that one, we're raising ethical human beings, and I think we're already, schools are already doing that right now. The second layer to that is the things that schools need to keep working on is like how do we raise AI literate human beings, and how do we make sure that the people that we're bringing into the workforce, the people that we're bringing into society understand AI to a point where they can kind of make their own ethical decisions when different situations come up where there maybe isn't a roadmap or where there isn't a specific guideline. Um, and so it really is just about making sure that people are equipped with the right context or equipped with the right literacy or equipped with the right knowledge in order to do so. And that isn't always going to be using widgets or chatbots or whatever it is. Sometimes it is understanding like the older version of AI. It's like, oh, how is like AI affecting content that I see on my social media, or how is it affecting my likelihood to get a car loan when I apply for one through a bank? Like what do the systems look like on the back end and how is AI affecting it?
For sure. I mean, I like many of the points that you've made so far. I also think it's important to recognize that AI has already infiltrated our daily lives. I think it's important that we see how AI is already around us. Like many of the search algorithms and filtration algorithms that we're seeing, be it on YouTube or social media, are examples of AI in real time. And as you mentioned, the ethicality of AI is also something that's dual faceted. I mean, obviously, it comes down to how people are using AI technology in terms of things like deepfakes. But at the same time, we also need to consider the aspect of the creator behind AI and the intent of that. I think all of this is a really crucial topic, and we need to tackle it not just through discussion, but also in terms of policy and placing guardrails on this new technology.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like to be clear, like aiEDU has been doing this work since around 2019. And so like the work that we are doing is kind of rooted in that like AI already was going to be a very influential technology back in 2019. It was like if AI
Yeah.
never really progressed after 2019, it was already super influential. It was already affecting people's lives, maybe a little bit more in the background or behind the scenes, and people weren't really quite aware of it. I think large language models and things like ChatGPT kind of brought that background influence to the foreground, and people are very much so immediately seeing the effects in real time. But yeah, if you stopped the progression of AI technologies in like you could throw a rock and choose wherever, but like 2019, 2020, 2021, like if you stopped AI at any one of those points, it still would have affected society on a pretty large scale. And so I think making sure that our apertures are wide enough to understand it's not just the shiny tool in front of us, but it's all of the technology that's built behind those tools as well. Understanding all of that is going to be really important.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that your organization has been around since 2019 itself already speaks to the idea that AI has been around for so long and that AI literacy has been something that's not just pertinent now, but over the course of like the entire past decade. I also want to spotlight the issue of AI bias. So there's a lot of bias that's being used in AI at like the highest levels, and it's really scary. Things like facial recognition algorithms being used by law enforcement, or AI that's now being used in the tax auditing process. All of these are actually have been already been proved to be biased towards certain demographics and against some. So that already shows that AI bias is such a major issue and one that can affect people in real time. So can you tell us exactly what AI bias is and how it's affecting people on an everyday basis?
Sure. On a very broad and large scale, AI bias is this concept of AI is basically just built on a lot of data. It takes a ton of training data in order to build a pretty good, not even just large language model, but even like a logistic regression model. Like any basic AI models requires a lot of data. The data by itself influences a lot of what the AI can know, quote unquote, or what it understands about the world. And so AI bias is this idea that like the data that you feed into these AI training systems for these AI systems will heavily influence the way the AI is going to be acting, the way the decisions it will make, the information it will feed back to you. Um, and sometimes that data can be heavily biased. Some really great examples. This is an example that was used, again, pre-GPT, but back in, I think it was 2021, a launch had app or an app had launched the goal was for this app to just like look at your skin and just recognize whether blemishes on your skin were like melanoma or if they were dangerous. You had to get them checked out by a doctor. And it was the app itself was trained only using a bunch of undergraduate students in the Boston region. And the app had actually gone live and it launched, and we found that it was actually just really bad at recognizing skin tones that were a lot darker, mostly because of the training data. If you only train a tool on a bunch of people that were between the ages of 18 and 21, only in the Boston region. Like it very like restricts the kind of diverse data that's available elsewhere in the world. And so obviously the AI that was developed was not very good at recognizing skin tones from people outside of that specific demographic. And so that's a pretty just like simple example of bias. What people are talking about it now in the context of large language models is that large language models feed off a ton of historical data. You could argue like the majority, like more data than any human can take in. Um, and so because it has so much data, it also ingests a lot of historical bias, the kind of data that humans recorded in in the 60s, that probably had a lot of bias in it, even if it felt like it was like a news article or something that felt like it seemed like it should have been bias free. And so we need to just like the large language models themselves probably have a lot of bias built into it, but there's so much data that it's like hard to define and hard to pinpoint exactly where it exists. And so solutions for bias are either on two ends, on the development side or on the deployment side. Like what people who are using the AI can help mitigate for bias, and people who are developing the AI can help mitigate for bias. But these are very difficult problems to solve right now.
Yeah, I think the point that you made about data is extremely important. I mean, a good phrase that many people that I've previously spoke to have used when discussing AI bias is that a model is only going to be as good as the data that you train it on. So the data we use is going to be everything at the end of the day. Now, I also want to spend some time discussing the educational aspect of AI that you guys are involved in. So, for starters, what do you think AI's impact is on the classroom?
Okay, there's so many things there too. I mean, I'm gonna get a little bit just like big sky thinking for a minute, but generally, like the purpose of classrooms or the purpose of education is to prepare today's kids or today's students for the future of what society is going to look like. I think what a lot of the anxiety AI is bringing to people that work in the classroom is that it become like the with a that future state or what kids are going to be growing up into, it becomes more and more of a mystery. Like teachers today, parents today, it's really difficult sometimes for them to just give kids recommendations on what careers to go into. If I have a 11th grade student coming to me and they're thinking about what major they want to choose for in all of their college applications, it's really difficult to have a clear sense of like what kinds of careers are going to make them successful in the future. How do I give them recommendations? Like that future is so mysterious. And so I think that's having effects in the classrooms today where teachers are teaching but without a super clear idea of what that future looks like. That by itself, I think is it gives teachers a lot of anxiety. It gives people who are trying to help kids or young people today, it gives them a lot of anxiety, and that's pretty valid. So that's like the general, I think, effects that it's having in the classroom. But then there's a lot of like very specific practical effects, meaning the prevalence of AI and student on the student use side leads to a lot of worries that teachers have about kids using it to cheat. The idea that using a lot of AI on schoolwork will offset the goals of learning, meaning, offloading thinking to AI systems is going to um, inhibit students' learning progress, and that's very true. Um, and then there's also the idea that teachers can use AI in their own practices for lesson planning, for grading, for reviewing content or giving feedback on drafts. Like there's so many ways that AI tools are presenting themselves to teachers and to students to be used in the classroom. I think the folks in the classroom really quite haven't been able to define it for themselves. It feels like it's a lot of, hey, here's this really cool tool and it could do this for you. And teachers and students are just like, yeah, I could use it for that, but I don't know if that's the best thing for me. And so that's kind of where we are right now, is that there's a lot of tools being used in classrooms, so people don't quite know how to parse through them. People, perhaps teachers and students aren't AI literate enough to understand how to make those critical decisions. And so maybe building a lot of that literacy for themselves can help them parse through a lot of that data.
Yeah, I think one way to easily understand the educational impact of AI is that AI is making everything easy because of how quick you can do work with it. I mean, it can reduce tasks that used to take like days or even weeks sometimes to like a matter of hours or minutes in instances. So I also think it's important to have these AI skills if you're a student because a lot of like I'm assuming that a lot of the workforce, maybe 10 or 15 years down the line, is going to require these AI skills because if you can increase efficiency, that's probably what these employers are going to want. So it's also important to know exactly how to use this technology in the best way. So what do you think are some of the AI skills that students need to have?
Yeah, I mean, like what you just said about it making everything easier, I think it does make everything easier only in the short term, only like for things that are right in front of you. But in the long term, it actually might make things a little bit harder. Meaning, so I mean, the classic example is a student using a large language model in order to generate an essay for them. And if I, as a student, keep doing this, then my own skills in order to write my own essay are going to deteriorate. And so I think in the short term, it helps making writing a specific essay really easy, but in the long term, it generally will deteriorate my own writing skills. And so it'll make whatever tasks I need to do in the future maybe a little bit harder if I don't have that crutch with me to use. Um, and then your question kind of like highlights AI skills. And I'm not really super sure about how to define AI skills even. I think the technology itself is going to continue to change. And I think things like agentic AI are still continuing to shift right now. Um, embodied like AI with embodied learning or spatial intelligence. Like there's so many different examples of how the way that we interact with AI is going to be changing even over the past year, not even considering what could happen in the next couple of years. And so it's really difficult to put a pin in what AI skills are specifically. I think a lot of it comes down to like what are the human skills that I think we need to bring to the table. For years, AI scientists and AI advocates have been talking about human in the loop and like what does that mean? Like what does a human need in order to work alongside AI? I think Ethan Mollick calls this co-intelligence in his book. Like, what does this look like for us to work alongside AI, and what are those human skills that we need to bring to the table? I think that's a lot of what a lot of education systems around the world are trying to define right now. Um, but I mean, I when I was teaching, when I was in the classroom, I remember going to specific professional development courses for the four C's, right? Creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, and communication. And like even those kinds of skills are things that I think we need to be continuing to double down on in humans and in students because those are the kinds of skills that are going to give them the tools in order to work alongside AI, to work alongside humans, to do a lot of like actual project-based work. Like if I see a problem in my community and I want to solve it, maybe I can use AI, but I'm probably going to have to collaborate and communicate with other people. I'm probably going to have creative problem solving skills. I'm probably going to have to communicate all of my um so the solutions I've built to the people who need the solutions. Like there's a lot of just human-centered skills that I think we need to be building as well. When it comes to AI-centered skills, I think that's really difficult and hard to say that that's what we need to be doing in schools. I think schools should start with the human-centered skills and thinking about what makes humans pretty unique in those problem-solving situations, and then think about how to bring in AI tools alongside that.
Yeah, and so I think your point here is that we need to maintain a balance with AI to preserve our own critical thinking. Like, it's not just about the assessment setting, but also understanding that, like, finding or creating solutions in the real world when you're in a job, for example, might not be somewhere where AI can easily be applied.
For like high school kids, but even for like when I'm thinking about what does a fifth grade teacher do, right? Like a fifth grade class doesn't always have to replicate what happens in the real world. We have to think about what works for a student developmentally. Like if a 10-year-old might not want to use AI tools for all of its problem solving, for all of their problem solving. And so creating tests that don't use AI is going to be very important. And as a teacher or as educators, we should understand like developmentally what is correct and how do we implement AI in these specific areas. I mean the really overused metaphor is the calculator, right? Like we don't give kids calculators when they're learning their times tables, but we give them for calculus classes. And so like we need to like scaffold that learning in ways that make sense for kids. And where you bring in AI and how you bring in AI is something that I think we've yet to define.
For sure. So building off of this, the last thing that I want to cover is a call of action. So what steps do you think students can take to increase their AI literacy?
Yeah, I mean, generally, there's two things. There's one, I think there is like when you're actually using AI tools, like I think you always need to have a critical eye against it. Meaning, no matter how good AI is getting, I think it's always going to be not good. It's always going to be kind of like a fake representation of what intelligence, quote unquote, is. And so making sure that you are always critical of it is, I think, the starting point. And I think too is like understanding what like long-term effects is going to have outside of me. When I use a large language model, it's really clear what the immediate reward is going to be. I can immediately have this answer, or I can immediately do this task, or I can immediately write this insane poem, or whatever you want it to do. But think about like take a moment to think about like what are the effects outside of the immediate gratification side of things. What effects is it going to have on me as a person? What effects might this have on other people? I know a lot of people are even trying to understand what are the environmental effects of artificial intelligence today. I think trying to think about what are the effects of what you're doing outside of the immediate moment is really important. And there are still some cases in which using a large language model is going to be a great use of your time, a great use of your skills, a great use of your cognitive load. But there are a lot of times where it's not such a good use of your time and skills. So like thinking about when and where and when and how to use AI is really important.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. We've touched on many aspects of the AI paradigm, ranging from the application of AI in education all the way to the ethicality of using and creating AI. I really enjoyed this discussion.
Yeah, thanks, Ishan.